Assalamu alaikum, it's Faisal here, and welcome to the next part of the process. It's the Know Your Purpose framework today, day 5, and here's what we're going to cover. So we're going to cover the first part, which is worship, then unity and relationships, and then justice and jihad. So let's get straight into it and look into worship a little bit. So this is the first stage of the process. And I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. So that's chapter 51, verse 56. So that's obviously the best known verse on what our purpose is. You know, we have not created man and jinn to worship me. So this is the one that we all know, and the one that we practice through our daily rituals. And this is critical to the overall fulfillment of our purpose. So previously, we defined what purpose meant. Now let's define what worship actually means. So Ibn al-Qayyim, worship, ibadah, unites two principles: the extremity of love with the extremity of humbleness and submissiveness. So whoever you loved but you were not submissive to, you are not a worshipper of him. And whoever you were submissive to without showing love, you are not a worshipper of him until you are both loving and submissive. Interesting. So Ibn al-Kathir, he said, in the legislation it is an expression for what combines the perfection of love, muhabba, submissiveness, khudu, and fear, khawf. Ibn Taymiyyah, a term that combines the perfection of love for Allah in its greatest level and the perfection of humbleness in its greatest level. For love devoid of humbleness and humbleness devoid of love is not considered worship. Rather, worship is what combines between the perfection of both matters. So when you love something, you are fully immersed, you're present, you're consumed. And when you're humility, you're humble, you're dependent, you're in awe, you respect, you want to please. So essentially, what worship means, what these two states, when they're combined, these two is God's pleasure. So, and that just doesn't mean on the prayer mat. Worship as a construct, or it means to please. So where love, fear, and humility meet. So living a life of purpose means that every single breath, every single step you take will be intended on God's pleasure and gaining reward. So ultimately it is mindfulness, God consciousness, taqwa in every fibre of the life that you're living. Remember, Islam means submission. So to submit to Allah completely and wholly and holistically and fully, that is what pleases Him. Sheikh Ahmad Yusuf says it quite well, where he says, when you're in love, you can no longer see the faults in that person. It's a deep love. So if you love Allah, how can you see faults in His plans? So this is another thing that would help us with dealing with issues that happen in our life, etc. Because if we believe and if we truly trust Allah and we know that, look, this is happening for there's a deeper wisdom behind it. It helps us come to terms and cope and to deal with these things. So the famous hadith, the hadith of Jibreel, is about Islam, Iman, Ihsan, and the end times. And in that, the Prophet, a stranger visited, and he was, dressed impeccably, and not a speck of dust was on him. And he then started questioning the Prophet, on what he asked him. Okay, what is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? And tell me about the hour. And then obviously people were shocked. Who is a stranger just questioning our Prophet, etc. But then obviously afterwards, the Prophet said, "This is that was Angel Jibreel, and he came to teach you about your religion." So with ihsan is often translated as excellence, and then he said, okay, so what is ihsan? The answer that the Prophet gave was to worship Allah as though you can see Him, and if not, know that He sees you. So just think about that for a second. So if we could see Allah, we would be fully conscious of Him. He'd be fully tangible in our minds, and He would have our full heart and full focus and full this and full that. And so that's what ihsan, that's what we need to aspire to. That's what it really is. So having excellence and high standard in the full compliance to His laws. I mean, one interesting thing about this hadith is that the fourth element was telling me about the hour, and that aspect is dealing with the issue of time. Time is obviously the fourth element, and time is what Shaitan is trying to steal away from us. So that's just an interesting kind of anecdote or a side point. So everything that you can do, everything you do can be a worship if it's done for His sake. So your marriage, if it's for the sake of God, every second in it, where you're performing duties for the right reasons. That's why intentions are everything. It's not only just acts of worship like the 5 pillars. Because if you think about it like that, if we separate worship from just general day-to-day activity, that's very secular. That just takes God out of the equation, and this is religious activity, and this is my normal day-to-day. Whereas Islam combines the two, and when we look at times when Muslims are successful, the Golden Age, etc., these two things were united. So this is central, and He is central in our lives. So that means that you can be worshipping whilst doing menial tasks like brushing your teeth. Even another side point, interestingly, if you have food in accordance with what is the sunnah, again, you're eating, you're filling your body and giving it the sustenance it needs, but again, it's mindful, it's conscious. Okay, this is the type of food that pleases Allah, this is the type of food that the Prophet had, etc. So the real question we need to ask ourselves is, what makes God pleased with us? So what is worship in Arabic? The word is ibadah, and the problem is with the word worship, which I'm going to come on to slightly later, is that we think of in prostration, on the prayer mat, bowing down, all of these things. A better word or better translation of the word ibadah is actually servitude. So the dictionary definition of servitude is the state of being a slave or completely subject to someone more powerful. So again, this one takes us back to the Fatiha, the Shahada. If we fully submit our every element of our essence, that's what being a servitude is. That's what actually servitude is. Look at the people of Noah, for example. They were corrupt. Allah wanted to destroy them all, but Noah, he was saved because he was the only one that pleased God, and in return, humanity was saved and restarted through him. So he did things that people thought he was crazy. Oh, why are you building a boat? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And he called people to God for over 950 years. So he was in full servitude of what Allah wanted. So it's the whole tawakkul, fully trusting in Him, even others think you're crazy. So doing exactly as He says without question. Again, I've used this example before, but story of Ibrahim, having that complete obedience, complete submission to take even the thing that you love the most, your children, and be ready to sacrifice them. Right? So it's because this obedience is what then unlocks further understanding, further insight, further basira. So this is a constant reminder, for us. So Allah obviously wants to be remembered. So obviously dhikr means remembrance. So, and again, it doesn't just mean on the rosary beads, or doing tasbih. The Quran, for example, is the ultimate dhikr. Praising Him and thanking Him, expressing shukr in all times, whether life is good or not. If my servant is grateful, I will increase him. So that's obviously a well-known verse from the Quran. We know that if we're grateful, Allah will give it to us more barakah. Worship also means sincerity and authenticity. So it is said that Allah loves you more than 70 mothers, or in another narration is 70 times more than your own mother. But now let's analyze that slightly. What does that actually mean? So if you actually think about a mother and her children, a mother doesn't just enjoy the time that the child is being good or doing what the mother wants, etc. They love every single second of that child's existence, while in them breathing and sleeping and smiling. And even if they've hurt themselves, but they're just enjoying the moment that every single second that the child exists. But what makes a mother most happy? When the child's growing and learning, and so it's the same with Allah. So the heart, what this is all, to summarize it, the heart of worship essentially is to surrender, to submit fully, to comply. Like if we think about Adam and Eve, what was their deen? What was their deen? Because was it the Islam that we know today? 5 prayers? Was it all this, or was it just submission? It was submit and follow the commands that have been given. So that's something that's food for thought. So the next question is, how do you submit? How do you surrender? The first thing is to let go of control. Everything is in His hands, and He will ensure you have what you need at the requisite time. Having that full trust in Him, and that's going to be hard letting go. We're control freaks by nature, right? We want to give ourselves the best opportunity, etc., etc. So it's really, really hard to let go because, oh my God, we might lose this, we might lose that. You know, the fear of loss, the fear of poverty. These are what Shaitan worries us with. Another way of us surrendering is to know Allah. So learning His 99 names. I remember, as I mentioned in a previous module, this was it used to be the first thing taught in school, because you know that every sphere of life, those names are relevant, and he can manifest through them. It also empowers you because it takes the pressure off you to achieve, and it puts it on Allah's infinite resource. So you just then have to focus on, okay, let me just do what I need to do. With Allah's help, that will get there. So you don't have to. You're taking the pressure off the outcome. Trust implicitly. Know that whatever happens is destined. It's a necessary part of the journey. Stay patient and grateful. So what this means, it doesn't mean just accept the status quo, do nothing. It's actually to become the best you can be and strive to do things for the right reasons, despite pressures from the world to push you otherwise. To battle to keep your soul intact and growing. To stay on your mission and stick to your core principles. Imam Ghazali said, do not allow your heart to take pleasure with the praises of people, nor be saddened by their condemnation. Only those who submit and comply fully are the ones who God uses for His work. They're the people of barakah. So if you don't submit and have the right intention at this stage, then you will naturally comply to something else. Ego, your own desires, to money, to other people, to government, etc. Either submit wholly and fully to the light, or go down the alternative, which is chaos and darkness. When you decide to live this type of life, that decision will be tested significantly. It may mean you do the opposite of what you're used to. It may mean doing difficult or unpopular or impossible tasks. Embrace it. Becoming friends with God. So we'll be talking about power relationships a little bit later, but this is what's important. To be a friend, you need to have connection and conversation. So that is through Salah, reading His book. Value what He values. So this is the most important relationship. If you can fix this, the rest of your life will fall into place. Kierkegaard actually said a really good quote. The person who surrenders absolutely to God with no reservations is absolutely safe. From this safe hiding place, he can see the devil, but the devil cannot see him. The purpose of worship. So why does Allah actually ask us to worship Him? Remember the fitrah, we made this primordial covenant, which by nature wants to submit and serve in order to please Him. And so Allah obviously deserves to be worshipped, revered and served, but we also have been endowed, in terms of our natures, with the psychological and spiritual needs that are designed to fully conform with this duty, which when fulfilled, bring us peace, tranquility and happiness. There's no way to understand God's purposes except through revelation. So in Revelation, Allah tells us that He does not do purposeless or arbitrary matters. So again, the fact that He's asked us to worship Him is this. We need to know that there's an infinite and deep wisdom behind it. It's not purposeless. Ibadah is not meaningless rituals. It is cultivating a broader relationship with the Creator, a form of communication or dialogue between the Creator and His creation. The Hadith Qudsi, which says, I am as my servant thinks I am. I am with him when he makes mention of me. If he makes mention of me to himself, I make mention of him to myself. And if he makes mention of me in an assembly, I make mention of him in an assembly better than it. And if he draws near me to an arm's length, I draw near him to a cubit. And if he draws me near to me a cubit, I draw near to him a fathom. And if he comes to me walking, I go to him at speed. So that's the idea. The idea is that if you take a step, Allah takes 10 steps towards you. So this is what worship does, but it has to come from us. One of the best kinds of ibadah man can perform is the supplication, the du'as, which to ask Allah for help. The Prophet said, supplication is itself the true worship. So remember, this is what will help us at this point, is to remember our true essence. We're our soul first and foremost, and so what worship or ibadah actually is soul food, and it gives us inner and outer peace. Remember, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest, which is verse of the Quran. So that's literal. If we understand worship as rituals, just rituals to follow, that's actually a Christian concept, because Allah doesn't need our worship. He doesn't need anything from us. He needs nothing, but we need Allah. So to be in submission to the concepts and principles that have been ascribed to us, it's not for Allah's benefit, it's actually for us. If you think about like the concept of puja in Hinduism or Buddhism, that also means worship. So we need to reframe our understanding of what worship actually means. Ibadah is a collective name of all that Allah loves and is pleased by, of both hidden and manifest acts and statements. As Ibn Taymiyyah. So therefore, it's much more than prostration and rituals. They help you, but they are the means, not the end. So why do we need to do it? The first command that comes in the Quran, Surah Baqarah, people worship your Lord who created you and those before you, that you may be mindful of God. So again, worship your Lord so that you may be mindful of God. Mindfulness is key. Taqwa. Cooperate with one another in righteousness and in God consciousness, and do not cooperate in sin and hostility, and be mindful of Allah. Surely is severe in punishment. So the idea is there's this kind of duality here, virtues and vices. If you are righteous and God conscious, that subdues shaitan, because he's trying to take you towards sin and hostility. So again, this is where the whole concept of salam comes from, peace. So if we're righteous and we're God conscious, we're righteous in our actions, and we're God conscious, then that will lead to us having inner peace and outer peace. And gratitude. So be mindful of God and be grateful. So again, if you're conscious of Him, you will also be grateful for all the good things He's given you, etc. So all of this is what nourishes the soul and gives it what it needs to grow. Do you remember we talked about the tree and the salt, and that's what blocks it from what it needs to grow. So this essentially is anti-salt. This is actually what it needs to grow. If you see ibadah as service and servitude, you begin to think differently. So you're no longer content with just carrying out your prayers and fasting in Ramadan. You will level up. You'll become conscious, mindful and grateful. You will become vigilant of things leading you astray. Believers enter wholeheartedly into submission to God. Do not follow the steps of Shaitan. He is clearly your enemy. You will see that you need to serve yourself to become the best version of yourself and attain your higher purpose, or highest purpose. You need to serve others, add value to society and community. So this is what serving Allah actually looks like. The rituals all help this state of taqwa, God consciousness, and help us to be mindful. When we're mindful, then we will continue to stay on the path and do good and do good and do good, because we have to remember that Shaitan's constantly taking us the other way. That he's never rests, he's always on it. So we need to have our defences up. Ibadah should also be meaningful and sustainable. Prophet said that worship is what you can handle, because by Allah will not tire, but you will. One final thing to remember is that Allah does not need our worship. As I mentioned, it does not increase or decrease His glory even a millimeter. We need it. There was an interesting longitudinal study in 2018 on thousands of people who were followed up from their childhood until tens of years later. And they were watching how closely they stuck to religious practices. The results of the study was, in the present study, we prospectively examined the association of religious involvement in adolescence with a wide array of psychological well-being, mental health, physical health, character strength, outcomes in young adulthood. All models were controlled for socio-demographic characteristics, mental health, wherever data was available. Compared with no attendance, at least weekly attendance of religious services was associated with a greater life satisfaction and positive effect, a number of character strengths, lower probabilities of marijuana use and early sexual initiation, and fewer lifetime sexual partners. We hypothesize that both frequent service attendance, prayer and meditation are each associated with greater psychological, mental, behavioural and physical health and character strength outcomes. So you can see the power of it, not just spiritually, but physically, mentally, emotionally, all on all forms of our energy. Allah orders us to do what will benefit us and forbids us what leads us astray. So Ibn Qutayba said, Allah did not order the servants with what He did because of His need to do it, and He did not forbid some matters out of stinginess. He rather prescribed upon them what leads to their goodness and forbade what leads to their corruption. So essentially, everything that we have to do is for our good. Everything that we have to avoid is because it would lead us to bad. So let's protect us from it. So we are the ones who are in need of material, intangible, and psychological help. And this is the last kind of statement on this, is that how worship is the cause of personal attainment and perfection. So Sayyid Nursi said that, consider this, together with being physically small, weak, powerless, and one of the animals, man bears with him an exalted spirit and has vast potentiality, and unrestricted desires, infinite hopes, and uncountable ideas and unlimited powers. And he has a nature so strange, he is as though an index of all the species and all the worlds. As for worship, it expands his spirit and raises his value. It causes his ability to unfold and develop, allowing him to become worthy of eternal happiness. Worship is also a means of rectifying and purifying his inclinations, realizing his hopes, and making them fruitful, and of marshalling his ideas and setting them in order, and also of reining in and limiting his three powers of appetite, anger, and intellect. As per Imam Ghazali. Worship also removes the rust of nature from his members, physical and spiritual, each of which, when transparent, is like a window onto his private world, that of humankind. Also, when performed with both conscious and of mind and heart and body, worship raises man to the dignity of which he is worthy and to his pointed perfection. It is a subtle, elevated relation and an illustrious, lofty connection between the bondsman and the one worshipped. This relation constitutes the utmost degree of human perfection. Sincerity in worship is this, that it is performed only because it is commanded, even though it comprises numerous instances of wisdom and benefits. Each of those may be a reason for performing worship, but sincerity makes it imperative that the true reason be the command to perform it. If the wisdom or benefit is made the reason, then the worship is null and void, but it merely encourages the person to perform the worship. It is permissible. So this is okay. That's a really long quote. Essentially, what it's saying, worship is the means for mankind to become its true and perfect self. Right? It becomes the best version of itself through worship. But how it is its most potent worship is its most potent when it's coupled by sincerity. And how it's coupled by sincerity is if it's done only because it was commanded. If you're doing it because, oh, this is going to make me physically better, it's going to make me mentally better, it's make me psychologically better, then it loses sincerity. But what he says at the end, if it just encourages the person to perform the worship, it is permissible. So again, the reason for mentioning it here, again, not so it becomes null and void, actually just so you understand there's other benefits to it. And so, if that encourages you, then, alhamdulillah. So true worship can only be performed when the veils hiding the heart are lifted, so that the eternal light shines upon it. It is only then the heart is enlightened by the divine light. It is only that the soul sees the truth through the celestial niche. The purpose of the creation of this universe is to discover and see that hidden treasure. So that was Abdul Qadir Jilani. And Rumi said, when I touch the ground in prayer, I have no other purpose than you. So that's, full khushu, full God consciousness. Okay, so that's worship, which is the first layer of this model. So relationship with unity. Okay, and so the Quran says, and hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether and do not become divided. And remember the favour of Allah upon you when you were enemies, and He brought your hearts together and you became by His favour brothers. And you were on the edge of a pit of the fire and He saved you from it. Thus does Allah make clear to you His verses so that you may be guided. So that was chapter 3 of the Quran, verse 103. So I talked about a longitudinal study earlier. There's another one. This was done by Harvard University. So this is quite a famous one actually. And in this longitudinal study, they followed people around for 75 years. And their objective was this. They wanted to know the answer to this key question. What is the key to happiness and success? So they followed loads and loads of people around. And what they found, they found that, okay, when, they basically they checked in at different points of their life, and then at the end as well. And when they checked in on some people had become divorced. Some people had become very successful, and people are very varying degrees of success. Some people have gone to jail. It was really, really interesting to see the breadth of all of these different people. But what it was established, the key to happiness and success, i.e., the thing that led to most people, the people that were the most successful in this study, the answer was good relationships. Those people that were the happiest and most successful were the ones that had the best relationships in their life. They were married with kids and happily married, and they had really children. They had really good relationship with their parents, and stuff. Whereas the ones who said they were unhappy or had lots of failure in their life or depressed and all this kind of stuff, it was because they had really, really bad relationships. That was the crux or the conclusion from this study. So it's very, very interesting. There's also a famous hadith that half of the deen is ibadah and half of the deen is muamalat, which is relationships. So there's so much emphasis on relationships in Islam. If you don't fast or pray, Allah can forgive that because He says that you're doing that for me. But if you wrong someone, Allah can't forgive that. Only that person can. So you not having a good relationship with someone or you wronging someone, they can prevent your entry into paradise. That's how serious this actually is. So it's extremely important to understand this aspect of our purpose, which is to remain united at all times. So society today is pushing individualism and it's pushing it hard. But this is the opposite to what we need, both for our body and mind, but also our souls. So if you look at the impact that lockdown had on people's mental health, and they say that in jails, when they do solitary confinement, that leads to a much higher likelihood of self-harm and even suicide. Basically, to the point where they've recently announced that they're going to be minimizing or reducing the amount of solitary confinement they give to the prisoners because of these of how devastating an impact it has on them. Unity is in our fitrah. Souls are like soldiers. If they find something in common, they unite, and if they do not find something in common, they diverge. So the Jamaat is extremely important. There's a reason why Islam consistently and continually prioritizes the collective over the individual, the power of brotherhood. So even one of the hadith is to return salam to your brother is obligatory, right? Obligatory. It's not it's nice to do or you should do it. Why is it? So no religion stresses on unity more than Islam. Obviously, if someone said salam to you and you haven't returned it, that could allow a small seed to fester, and so Islam blocks it at the outset. Look, you have to return this salam. So it's always promoting good relationships. Any civilization or kingdom that ever failed was due to divide and conquer. And there's a famous Aesop fable of the bulls and the lion, or it might be the bulls and the wolf. But what happened is that there's 3 bulls, and obviously the lion would not go near them when they were all together. So slowly but surely he would have whisper in the ear and make them come one at a time. And when he isolated them, then that he would go after them and eat them, and then there were 2. And then he did the same, and then there was 1, and basically only by dividing them, he was able to actually get them. But whereas when they were together, they would have overpowered him. So he was fearful, and he kept his distance. This is a really critical sentence here. Believers are like a body. If one organ feels pain, the entire body feels pain. So that's again a very famous hadith. So let's examine it a little bit further. Let's go deeper. For your organs to fulfill their purpose, they need to be connected to their body. So this body is the ummah, right? So if we chopped off the hand, the ummah, as in the body, would be weaker. And the hand, i.e. the group that breaks away, eventually it will shrivel and die. It cannot exist on its own. So we need to stay within the main body. We are interdependent on one another. So that's a crucial point to actually understand, that we think, oh no, we're happy in our small little groups, and we can't get on with them. Those guys, they are doing their own thing, and they believe things are slightly different, etc. But again, you're weakening the overall body, and just like a body without a limb or without a certain part is weaker and it can't function. That individual thing can't function in isolation on its own without it being connected to the main body. So it's a very good analogy to keep in mind. We're all shepherds of a flock and part of a flock. If we leave the flock, the wolves of the world will devour us. Simple as that. Wolves and the lion story. Simple as that. We also share the same mission and are on the same journey. So this binds us together no matter what other forces do or say to divide. Look at the scholars of the past. They would have big disagreements and ikhtilaf, but it was always with mutual respect, the bigger picture. So, I mean, this is a really good quote here. Imam Shafi, he gave advice to a student after like a massive argument that they had. And he said, "Oh Yunus, hundreds of issues unite us, and only one issue divided us. Don't try and be triumphant in all differences. Sometimes winning hearts is more important than winning situations. Don't demolish bridges you built and crossed, for you may need them again one day for your return. Always hate what is wrong, but do not hate the one who errs. Hate sin with all your heart, but forgive and have mercy on the sinner. Criticize speech, but respect the speaker. Our job is to wipe out disease, not the patient." So again, the interesting thing here is, that's when I say to my wife, who might be upset with, something going on at home, etc. I always say, look, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because again, if you want to be right, you can labour on this point and you can drive it home because I want to win this point and this and that. But sometimes to be happy, let it go. Just let it go. It doesn't matter. So the other thing I would say here is that obviously I'm not a scholar, right? So I'm not going to answer or speak to the differences of Aqidah and all these things. I'm just looking at it from a purpose angle only. There was a book that I read, that I studied actually with a scholar, it's called The Secret of Secrets by Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. Right? Honestly, so he was talking about the Sufis, and so he was talking about the Sufi orders, like this different Sufi orders. But essentially what happens is that they all actually have the same goal, which is to get close to Allah. That's all their goals. But then there's different tariqas. So you have the Naqshbandis and the Qadiris and others, right? And so, but tariqa essentially just means method. So what would happen is that the Naqshbandis, I think, their chosen method to get close to God is praise and worship, praise and of Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then you would have the Chistis, I believe, who would use zuhud. So they would fast and do abstain from a lot of the worldly thing, and that would get them closer to God. Then you had another one who would do service, acts of service. So they would do like khidmah and things like that for their fellow man and stuff. And so that service was what would bring them close. So the idea essentially is that the objective is the same, the methodology is different. And if you actually then look at the sects within Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which is obviously the main group, essentially they all have the same, the 80-20 is exactly the same. Where they differ is just in terms of methodology and focus, right? So you have maybe the Tablighi Jama'ah you have, for example. So now what their objectives or their method is, we need to call people back to the deen, right? So dawah and things like that. So that's where they busy themselves with activity. You have you have Salafis, for example. Now they are very obviously fiqh orientated, very Aqidah driven, and so they're quite legalistic in terms of their view. You might have the Sufis who are more into the praise of zikr and things like that. So the point of what I'm trying to say here is that overall they're all aspiring to the same goal: Jannah, get close to Allah, etc. That's the same goal for everyone. But the methods that they're choosing are just the different ways of getting there. The whole thing, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And think of it like a company. Now imagine if everyone in the company only focused on marketing or only focused on operations, it would fail. In the same way, imagine if someone said, "Oh, there's only one true Islam, and you all have to do it this way." Well, then, the ummah is weaker for it, because the idea is that all of these people are practicing Islam, and they're using a different method to get close to Islam, which is then benefiting people in a different way, etc., etc. So, like I said, there's infinite wisdom in the way the way how things transpire. Yesterday, I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise, so I wanted to change myself. Rumi. Now, what this means, right, is that we obviously look. This problem of unity is a problem for the last 1,000 years, right? It's not something that I'm going to change or we're going to change. It's huge. It's too big, too big, too deep. But remember what we're trying to do. We can't get every Muslim to think this way, but we're trying to get to a tribe, a tipping point, as we said. If we can have this caliber of people who know, and if we can get a group of people who think, feel, and act in the right way, eventually you can hit a tipping point. Like South Africa. So I went to South Africa about 10, 12 years ago now. And one thing I was really impressed over there is that, first of all, they've been there 600 or 700 years now in terms of they're quite established Muslims. And there was one thing I noticed was they were very, very influential, as in the Muslims of Cape Town were very influential in that city. A lot of it was because they were business orientated, so they had a lot of money and influence and power. And so anytime there was something going, everyone else would come to them to get their vote or to get their support. But the second thing is that they would, they said that, look, South Africa has traditionally had a lot of racism, a lot of division, and so what we should do is we should all unite. So no matter what group they were, they all united and they pooled all their resources. So I remember there was a radio station where on certain days it was Sunni, and certain days it was Shia, and then But the point of it is that everyone was very, obviously I was only there for a couple of weeks, so obviously I'm sure there's nuances and there's details I'm not aware of. But just sort of looking at it from a distance, it was something that was very clear to me, especially because I'd come from Nottingham, a place that was very divided. So that was quite interesting. There's a community purpose. So it serves us like we serve it. So we are created for community and we all fulfill a different role within that community. You're a product of your environment. So spend time with the believers and those that remind you of Allah and your purpose. So belonging is vital, creating your tribe. The Prophet mentioned that a lone rider is accompanied by shaitan. And the Quran describes the community of the faithful as follows: as a plant that produces its offshoots and strengthens them, so they grow firm and stand upon their stalks. So Maududi said that there's no basis whatever in God's Sharia to make Shia, Sunni, Hanafi, Al-Hadith, Deobandi, Baridi and so on into separate ummahs. These ummahs are the product of ignorance. Allah has made us only one ummah, the Ummah Muslimah. So everything I'm saying now about unity, etc., is on the macro level, right? So this is also extremely important on the micro level, because what strong relationships represent is stability, order, and peace. A strong family unit leads to more successful children. And again, the world order has put this aspect completely upside down, with divorce and the erosion of the family unit is now it's leading to chaos everywhere. So that's why Islam stresses upon the importance of the Amir and the Jama'at. And if you look at when is Shaitan most happy, there's a famous story, a famous hadith of which one of the Shaitan's companions kind of went out and the one that he was most pleased with when they reported on what they did that day was the one of them said, I helped a man and woman to separate today, and he was most happy. He said, you did the best. So basically, he again a breakdown of relationship is because relationships and strong family units are the bedrock of society. So if it's a crack that appears and they start to crumble, then eventually society will fall down and crumble. Think about that rat experiment in the first week, in the first module. So we are all, so remember we said that the Amir and the Jamaat is very important, and so we need to recognise our own role as Amirs of our own Jamaat. So, the child, the mother, the father, basically everyone's Amir. So to give you an example, the eldest sibling is the Amir of all the children, his younger siblings. And the mother is the Amir of all the children, and the father is the Amir of the household. Now imagine if there was any problem or any issue with one of those relationships. So for example, let's say the eldest sibling was bullying the young. So that means that there's not order in that household. Remember, the Amir's role is to put order in place. So if the sibling is now causing issues, that's going to cause an issue and chaos for the mother, and then that, because she's got now these issues, that's now causing problems for the father, and now he's going to cause issues because he's not fully in place, or because he's got these issues going on at home, so he's going to cause issues for his boss. And then so if this happens on various households, then that community's in chaos. And then the community's in chaos, then that nation's in chaos. And then all this stuff goes all the way up, and it trickles all the way down as well. So basically, chaos in one place can mean that all aspects can be affected, and eventually everything can get into disarray. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Abraham Lincoln said that. So obviously, it's not always easy. It's easy to argue, and we're only human. It means that what this means, first and foremost, is that communication and empathy needs to be strong. So you may have had bad relationships, you may have had trauma, so this needs to be unblocked in order for you to function. You need to be able to obviously let things go, process things properly, and so purpose can help you to do that, because you start thinking of the bigger picture. You're not then obsessed by this micro detail. Oh yeah, but that person did this to me, and that person did that to me. You're thinking, okay, you know what? What's our bigger picture here? What do we need to do? What do I need to do to achieve this? Is this stuff helping me, or is it taking away from me, etc.? So that also means we have to restore broken relationships. Remember what pleases God first and foremost. Ego is the enemy. Reconciliation is the most important, not necessarily resolution. So you can disagree. You don't have to agree with everything. It's something you have to agree with something that you disagree with, for example. But as long as you reconcile, that's important. Basically, ikhtilaf is allowed. Remember the whole, do you want to be right, do you want to be happy? Allah knows our intention, and if you let things go, it will give him pleasure, which is part of our worship. I mean, I want to give you an example here, actually. There was an example with me going back maybe 5-6 years when I was getting married. There was a big issue with one of my family members who basically said, I'm boycotting the wedding for this reason and this reason and this reason. I think he had an issue with my parents or something. And basically because that person who was quite influential in our family was boycotting, that then led to others then saying, oh, we're not going to come either. So there's like 4 or 5 households now that were all not going to come. And this was making my mum and dad really upset, because this is their brothers and sisters. And so it was quite a tough one for me, because there was real reason for us not to like that person. That person who was boycotting. And he's boycotting. We were actually not inviting him because of the personal issues that we had and stuff. But again, his complaining, etc., was just going to everywhere. So I thought, okay, what's the big picture here? Because again, with the weddings and things like that, you can't take that stuff back. And if a lot of my family aren't there, it's going to affect my mum and dad. So what I did was that I went over and stuff. And even though he's done wrong by me, he's done wrong by my family. And when I say wrong, it's an understatement. I won't go into the details. But what then I did is I just went to him and I said, look, I really don't really want you to be there. Let's put your water under the bridge. Sorry about everything, from if there's any mistakes on my part, etc. He was really resistant initially and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, because his family were around him, they all wanted to actually go to the wedding. They didn't really like the stuff, so they then encouraged it. And then hugged him, and then off we went. So I didn't really feel good about it. To be honest, I didn't really want to do it, but alhamdulillah, it was the right thing to do, and it actually brought a lot of a lot of barakah in it, because then, like I said, all the family came. It was like a really good wedding, and really everyone was really happy about it, and it resolved this deep issue that had the potential to blow up. And instead of that, it completely just softened it, and it was all put behind us. And it required me to just put the ego to a side, and that's the point. So how do you connect with believers heart to heart? So you have to know that you need others and that they need you. We are interdependent creatures. The problem is that we very much, we take empowerment the wrong way. Because empowerment, I believe massively in empowerment, self-actualization, all that stuff, but not at the expense of relationships. It's not like, oh yeah, I only need myself, I don't need anyone else. No, it doesn't work like that. We all need each other. And if you believe that, you will then make effort towards others as well. So how do you cultivate a community? You have to protect it at all costs. You focus on the commonality, not the differences. And obviously you have to suppress the ego time to time. Know that your ummah, your family, community, and yourself are weaker without one another. And think about the stability a united family and community gives you versus a broken home. And one of the ways of doing that is make due allowance for man's nature and enjoying the doing what is right, and leave alone all those who choose to remain ignorant. So again, Allah says, people are weird, people are different. Just make allowance to that. Just be mindful that, okay, this person is the way they are. They're not trying to be offensive, or that's just the way they are. It's fine. Secondly, Allah also says in the Quran, for true servants of Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, are only they who walk gently on the earth, and who, whenever the foolish address them, reply with words of peace. So again, you diffusing the situation where instead of escalating, they're the true servants of Allah. So prophetic sayings are related to unity. So, O you who believe, obey Allah and obey the Prophet and those in authority from amongst you. Umar radiallahu said that the Prophet said, be with the Jama'ah and avoid firqa, which are misguided Muslims who have failed to constitute themselves as an authentic Jama'ah. For surely Shaitan is the one who remains alone, and he stays far from two believers who jointly constitute a Jama'ah. Whoever wishes to experience the fragrance of paradise must cling to the Jama'ah. Ibn Umar reported that the Messenger of Allah said that the hand of Allah is on the Jama'ah. Whoever separates it, i.e. rides outside the Jama'ah, will be separated and dispatched to hell. Umar said, there is no Islam without the Jama'ah, and there is no Jama'ah without the obligation of having to listen. There is no listening without the obligation to obey. And Abu Dawud adds, there is no Jama'ah without an Amir. So basically, again, the Amir Jama'ah, these are all patterns, trends keep showing themselves. Harith al-Ashari reported, I order you to adhere to 5 things: the Jama'ah, listening, obeying, hijrah, and jihad in the way of Allah. Whoever departs from the Jama'ah by as much distance as the span of a hand, he has removed the guardianship from Islam from his neck, except in case of his return to the Jama'ah. And whoever calls with the call of Jahiliyyah, such is from the ashes of Jahannam. Even if he fasts and performs salah and considers himself a believer, he will still enter into hell. So you can see just how important this stuff really is. The best deed after belief in God is benevolent love towards people. The best deed after believing in God is benevolent love towards people. So again, sometimes you have people who are, really outwardly religious and that, but then they have a really bad character in terms of how they are with other people, and that's empty. This is where we need to look deeper. The believer actively engages in bringing disputes to an end and helping family and friends reconcile back together. The Prophet ﷺ said that the act of reconciling is more beloved to Allah than prayer, fasting, and charity. Anas ibn Malik said that I heard Allah's Messenger ﷺ say that whoever desires an expansion in his sustenance and age should keep good relations with his kith and kin. So again, it leads to other barakah that we might not associate with it. Again, we think very logically. Barakah is illogical. That's Allah working behind the scenes. Abu Burda reported the Prophet said to him, Amwar to Yemen, and he said, make things easy and do not make things difficult. Give glad tidings and do not repel people. Cooperate with each other and do not become divided. Bukhari. Surely the believers are nothing but real blood brothers. So that's from the Quran. Real blood brothers. Even when you look at nature, it exhibits order, Animal and beasts of prey only take what they need to survive from weaker ones. They do not oppress or massacre. So in general, there's harmony amongst the wild. The Quran says they are not an animal on the earth, nor a bird that flies upon two wings, except they form communities like you. We have omitted nothing from the book, then all shall be gathered to their Lord. So the problem is that we don't act like nature. We have breached natural laws and our emotions, desires, thoughts, and thoughts. So we argue and break ties instead of keeping the order. So we can't even be like, like beasts, even though we're supposed to have the intellect and we're supposed to be better than. So what does this mean overall? We need to see unity as one of our core purposes and take every opportunity to keep ties and reconcile. When we begin to see the divine in each other, each meeting becomes a sacred encounter. So this is a quote by Fakhr Nisa Muhammad. So again, when you see, this person is a divine being, just like me, then when you're in that gathering with them, you are conscious of it. You're very conscious. Okay, you know what? I don't want to, leave this in a bad state, or all that. Eradicating division. So national differences are a fact established by the Quran and expressed as people and tribes. Where the Almighty said, "A people were created from male and female, and only people and tribes, so that you may know each other. For the most honourable of you is most honourable of you with God is the most God conscious." So again, the person who has of taqwa is the best. That means acquaintance with other people other than your own nations is encouraged to breed cross-fertilization of ideas. Again, we're very, very nationalistic today. It's crazy. So, but we've created you so that you may know each other. So that's actually a purpose of us, so we have that social aspect. Islam was able to record the best forms of interaction between Muslim peoples and the most beautiful forms of coexistence between different nationalities. So we had Salman al-Farsi, a Persian, Suhaib al-Rumi, a Roman, Bilal al-Habashi, an East African, among the companion of the Messenger of God, was destined to be a symbol of the civilizational mix between Asia, Europe, and Africa within Islam, which is the essence of pluralism. So, again, examples, even with the Sahaba, all people from different lands and tribes were part of his Sahaba. The Golden Age of Islam is a great example, multicultural society that thrived from people all around the globe, united. So one of the reasons, this is a kind of final statement on this, is that one of the reasons that life is difficult and has challenges, and the purpose isn't spelled out for us, is because if it was black and white, we would become like automatons. We would just follow, and become like angels, right? But not in a good way, in the sense that Allah's given us free will and all of this stuff to figure it out. Basically, there'll be no diversity. There'll only be one madhab, one way of doing things. Everyone have to follow it. But that's actually not human nature. Allah's created everyone uniquely in individual skills and individual experiences, and individual ways of looking at the world, etc. And instead of seeing it as a bad thing, that's why we're not united. No, that we need to embrace it. That vastness is the universality of Islam. No religion is as powerful or capable of greatness as much as Islam is, in terms of how it's encoded within every aspect of its DNA, and the fact that we're all, we're not one nation, we're not one nationality, we are many nationalities within the overall ummah. I mean, that means that you might have people who are naturally predisposed to courage, for example, and then people who are naturally predisposed to intellect, people who are naturally predisposed towards warriors, and people who are naturally disposed towards being scientists. And so the point of it is that you've got this fusion and between the ummah. Instead of embracing it, we think it's a bad thing. So what we're trying to say is that the universality of Islam, it's complemented, and we have to understand that some people are strict, some people are lenient. That's just the way people are. So what Islam promotes above all else is unity, not uniformity. So you don't actually have to be the same. Uniqueness is good. It's a good thing. A British Muslim can dress differently to a Nigerian Muslim, who may act differently to a Chinese Muslim. Allama Iqbal wrote about, he wrote, "The division of nations is the policy of the West. Islam desires the unity of man." Simple. That says it all. He actually wrote a lot about Muslim unity. He actually says this as well. There's one common gain and one common loss for all Muslims. One prophet for all, or one Iman for all. One Kaaba, one Allah, one Quran for all. How great it would be if Muslims were also one. I agree. So two things to revive the Ummah. So remember, obviously, start talking about original vision, second golden age, etc., etc. Well, it'll never, ever, ever happen without unity. It's a critical component. Sheikh Ramadan al-Bouti, he was talking about reviving the Ummah. He said, look, the first thing you need is a desire to actually revive it instead of being happy with the status quo. Second of all, you need unity. But ego is the thing that attacks the heart instead of being united. Because more interested in winning the small battle rather than working together and winning the war. That's why we're in the doldrums. Dr. Israr Ahmed, a Pakistani scholar, he also talks a lot about reviving the Ummah, and he said that we need to eradicate the nationalistic divisions, pool our resources, work together for a cause that transcends all of these differences. This was a key part of his effort, along with returning back to the Quran. Constant unity, again, theme. Even today, with respect to Sheikh Haytham al-Haddad, he said the Ummah would transform if it had two things, unity and leadership. So you can see that unity is a core component, and little to no progress can be made on the big picture without this being insisted upon. Final example is Israel. So with Israel, you don't really hear of divisions or sectarianism. They're massively outnumbered, but they're hugely successful. But you can see they've got this one cause of Israel that unites them all. And they've got a siege mentality that they've created. Oh, look, people don't want us to exist. No, we must exist. And no matter how right-wing they are, how left-wing they are, whatever sect they're in, they all have this belief that Israel must exist, and that unites them all. So love is the cause of unity in all things. Find the good, seek the unity, ignore the division amongst us. That's Aristotle. Final, a bit of food for thought on this. Why do Muslims walk around the Kaaba anti-clockwise? There's no clear answer in Islam, other than it's prescribed by the Prophet. But some people offer scientific reasons why this may be the case. It relates to the anti-clockwise movement of particles, bodies, and worlds. But all the following move in an anti-clockwise fashion: electrons around a nucleus, the blood around the body, the moon around the earth around the sun, the planets and the solar system around the sun and the solar system around the galaxy around space. But in the act of moving counterclockwise around the Kaaba, Muslims symbolically unite with particles, planets, solar system and galaxy, moving in the same direction as a demonstration of unity and praise of Allah. They move harmoniously with the movements of the whole of Allah's creation, and they will forever be doing so in the future. Basically, all of Allah's systems and creation unite, and us doing it demonstrates alignment and unity. So, in symbolism, like unity is a key aspect that's prevalent in Allah's divine systems. And so unity, balance, all of these core principles exist as natural laws. So again, it's something we need to strive for. So just in the jihad, this is the third component. In a nutshell, this is to keep the order, and that's what law does. And jihad means struggle, so that means your lifelong commitment is to maintain the order, no matter what that means. It means essentially enjoining the good, forbidding the evil. This is mentioned numerous times in the Quran. Shaitan and jinn will always try and cause disorder because that's their purpose. Interestingly, after the first revelation, so Iqra, what was the second surah that was revealed? It was actually Surah Qalam, the pen. And the central theme of that is justice. It talks constantly about the day of judgment. You're going to be tried. You're going to be this is where you're going to be held accountable. And then those who are good are going to go to heaven, and those who are bad are going to go to hell. Again, justice. So if you think about the fact that it's the second surah, so now we've had revelation from the Quran saying that read in the name of your Lord who created, etc., etc. So people are now, why was the first thing that they needed to understand was, are you going to be held accountable? Because this is vital to keep people on the right track. Because otherwise, if you don't, that's how you have anarchy, you have chaos. So why justice? Because justice goes hand in hand with the truth. Truth cannot exist without justice being done. Again, accountability, heaven, hell, I just mentioned. Justice is objective. It's clear, given the framework in Islam, what classifies as justice if applied properly. So justice in Arabic is translated as adl, which literally means placing things in their rightful place, and also affording equal treatment to others. So it's not just putting things right, it's doing so in a way that's fair and equitable. And that means that everyone has a right to it, just as everyone has a right to the truth, not just those in high positions. And when you speak, be just, even if it should be to a near kinsman. So that's in the Quran, in chapter 6. Justice is required of anyone who is called upon to lead a people, whether he's a ruler or otherwise. Surely God enjoins justice and the doing of good. Chapter 16. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also said, 1 hour of justice outweighs 60 years of worship. We sent our messages with clear signs, the scripture and the balance, so that people could uphold justice. So again, very clear about this is a critical part of our job description. That doesn't necessarily mean that you become an activist and you call things out. This is the ability to recognize good from evil and to do justice wherever you go and commit to doing so. Remember, we are vicegerents, so we have to instill order on the earth. You are the best nation raised up for mankind. You enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, and you believe in Allah. If only the people of Scripture had believed, it would be better for them. Though among them are believers, but most of them are disobedient. So this Quranic verse states, we are the best ummah, subject to 2 conditions. We believe, and we command good and forbid evil. So that makes us the best nation. Al-Ghazali also said, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is the greatest pillar in the deen. If this ceased to exist, then the deen would vanish, the period of no deen would prevail, misguidance and ignorance would spread, and the corruption would become worse, and the people would perish. So this is vital. It is vital. So the other thing is, why does Allah constantly tell us to look toward nature and take it as a sign? Look toward nature. Ponder on nature. Look at the signs. If those who, for those who believe, etc. It's because nature is an order. Nature is actually doing justice to its creation. It's living according to its purpose. It follows Allah's laws exactly as it should, day in, day out. It's on its fitrah. So that's why the sun rises and sets daily. That's why the 4 seasons come in and out. It's why the bees do their job, cross-pollinate, trees give out oxygen. If this is breached, so that, for example, let's say fracking, we get disasters. But we're no longer in balance because we're completely out of sync and we're getting worse. What's happening is that we're moving further and further away of what we should be doing, and as we do so, we're more in disorder than ever. So that's why justice is spoken so much, because it's the equilibrium, it's the balancing of law as it's supposed to be. So we're not doing just as a species. So remember we talked about Mizan and and why is the world the way it is? Because we're completely out of balance. It's because too much imbalance has been allowed to creep in, and so not enough people are putting things in the right order as it should be. Think about Ramadan as well. Ramadan is the month that we feel the most connected to Allah. But why? It's because we're actually on our purpose. We're doing things more in line with our fitrah and our purpose more than ever. We're suppressing our desires and all that kind of stuff. So we're doing, as we do more justice, there's more connection, etc. So all these things play together. Doing justice is easy to say, but it's hard to do. There's one surah in the Quran which it said if it was the only surah revealed, it would be enough for us. That's Surah Al-Asr. Right? By time, man is indeed in loss, except those who have believed and done righteous deeds, and advise each other to truth, and advise each other to patience. So what's interesting here, basically, man's in loss except those who have believed and done righteous deeds, and advised each other to truth and to patience. So what's interesting is that the truth is emphasized and done before patience. Why? Because when you're on truth, you will need patience. You will have to struggle. You will be afflicted with tests, trials and hardships. Look at the stories of the prophets and the greats who came before us. Their lives are full of difficulty and strife. And the prophets had challenge after challenge, pretty much from birth. And jihad means to struggle and survive, struggle and strive. Obviously we know the physical element of it, but it also means to be struggle, to be firm, to be disciplined upon truth, your principles, and being the best version of yourself. So these are the 4 different types of jihad out there. Obviously there's Qital, which is the one that armed struggle in defense. Then that's the one that is about battle and stuff. But then there's jihad of the nafs, which is your personal struggle towards attaining self-improvement, control, discipline, and following the laws, even if you find it difficult. Then there's jihad of truth and justice, so ensuring that you're putting that in place, you're always speaking the truth, ensure that the truth is spoken. And then there's jihad of your speech, jihad of wealth. So there's different types. Declare your jihad on 13 enemies you cannot see: egoism, arrogance, conceit, selfishness, greed, lust, intolerance, anger, lying, cheating, gossiping, and slandering. If you can master and destroy them, then you'll be ready to fight the enemy you can see. So these are all our enemies that we can't see and stuff. So once you've done that, now you're ready to face any other external battles. Even the word deen in Islam, which means religion, has justice, legal, commercial connotations embedded in its meaning. It comes from the root dana, which means to be indebted. We go, oh God, hukuk Allah, the rights of the Creator. We owe each other, hukuk Allah, the rights of creation. So being in debt. So what we're saying is the deen actually has debt within it. So being in debt involves judgment, which is dayuna. A place where debts are peacefully and civilly resolved, mudun or mudain. So again, got that root word in there, town and cities. And Medina city will have a governor or judge, which is a dayan. God himself is, one of his names is Al-Dayan, the ultimate judge. Madana, to build a city, to refine, to humanize. And Tamaddan, it means to revive and civilize a culture. So again, the deen is essentially debt, being indebted to. And so justice is bringing together all of these different things. So we can see how powerful word deen really is. It encapsulates so much. Just we're thinking of it merely as religion does it injustice. So this is another thing that can help us understand our obligations, our relationships and responsibilities, and the fact that we are indebted to Allah, to one another, and to ensure that we're always doing justice, inshallah. So here's what we covered: worship, unity in relationships, and justice and jihad. And the action items is that complete the worksheets in just below. And I'll leave you with this: if only He is satisfied with you, it does not matter if the whole world turns their back on you. So that's it for this one, and I'll see you on the next one.